He was an admiral with no navy, a regent with no king, and a Protestant nationalist trying to keep Hungary afloat between Hitler and Stalin. This is the story of Miklós Horthy, man who walked a political tightrope during the most dangerous time in modern European history. His name isn't as well known as Hitler, Stalin, or Churchill, but his decisions shaped the fate of Hungary and the lives of millions. After the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in World War I, Hungary was plunged into chaos. In 1919, a short-lived Soviet-style regime took power under Belakun, backed by Soviet Russia. It ushered in a brutal Red Terror. When that regime collapsed, Miklós Horthy, a former admiral of the Austro-Hungarian Navy, stepped in. He led the White Terror, a counter-revolution that crushed communist forces and restored order at a high cost. By 1920, Horthy was named Regent of the Kingdom of Hungary. There was no king, but he effectively ruled the country. Horthy was a devout Calvinist and a staunch conservative. He believed in order, tradition, and Hungarian nationalism. But he also found himself leading a country isolated and humiliated by the Treaty of Trianon, which had stripped Hungary of 2/3 of its territory and left millions of ethnic Hungarians outside its new borders. Horthy was not a fascist, but he was authoritarian. He distrusted liberal democracy, despised communism, and was wary of extreme ideologies. Still, during the interwar years, he tolerated and even empowered right-wing elements in Hungarian politics, partly to keep the left in check and partly to hold the country together. His government supported Christian values, limited press freedom, and began restricting Jewish participation in public life, especially in universities and civil service. While not as radical as Nazi policy, anti-Semitism was real and growing in Hungary, even before the war. At the same time, Horthy was playing a careful diplomatic game. He wanted to revise the Trianon borders, restore Hungary's territorial integrity, and reassert its place in Central Europe. But to do that, Hungary needed powerful allies, and by the late 1930s, only one nation was offering support: Nazi Germany. Horthy didn't admire Hitler personally, and he found Nazism too radical, but Hitler could give him what he wanted. With German support, Hungary regained southern Slovakia in 1938, Carpathian Ruthenia in 1939, and northern Transylvania from Romania in 1940. These were major political victories, and most Hungarians celebrated them. Horthy saw these territorial revisions as the undoing of Trianon and the redemption of the Hungarian nation. In 1940, Hungary formally joined the Axis, but Horthy still tried to preserve Hungary's independence from Berlin. He resisted extreme racial laws, slowed down the persecution of Jews, and tried to limit German influence over Hungary's internal affairs. That balancing act became harder once war broke out across Europe. In 1941, Hungary joined Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. Horthy hoped this would strengthen ties with Germany and ensure Hungary wasn't sidelined. But the campaign was brutal. Tens of thousands of Hungarian soldiers died, especially at the Battle of Stalingrad. By 1942, it was clear Germany was losing the war, and Horthy began to rethink the alliance. At the same time, Germany began pushing Hungary to adopt harsher anti-Semitic laws. Some were passed under pressure, but mass deportations were avoided for a time. Horthy and his ministers feared what Hitler would do, but they also feared Hungary being overrun by the Red Army. Caught between two totalitarian powers, Horthy began reaching out to the Western allies in secret. While he continued to pose as a loyal Axis partner, he quietly explored exit strategies. British and American contacts were made through neutral countries. Horthy's goal was to switch sides before the Soviets reached Hungarian soil, preserve national sovereignty, and avoid occupation. But Hitler found out. In March 1944, Germany launched Operation Margarathi and occupied Hungary. Horthy was left as a puppet regent, while the SS and German officials took real control. Adolf Eichmann arrived in Budapest and began organizing the deportation of Hungary's Jews. In just 2 months, more than 400,000 Hungarian Jews, most from the countryside, were rounded up and sent to Auschwitz. At first, Horthy did little. His power was limited, and his ministers collaborated with the Nazis. But as reports of mass killings reached him and pressure mounted from the Vatican, neutral states, and even his own conscience, he acted. In July 1944, Horthy ordered a halt to the deportations. The train stopped. Tens of thousands of Jews, especially in Budapest, were saved. It was one of the only times during the Holocaust that a Nazi-aligned government successfully stopped deportations, but for the majority, it was too late. In October 1944, Horthy made his boldest move. He publicly announced that Hungary was exiting the war and had agreed to an armistice with the Soviet Union. He hoped to follow the example of Italy and bring Hungary to the Allied side before total destruction. But Hitler reacted immediately. A fascist group, the Arrow Cross Party, was installed in power with German support. Led by Ferenc Szalasi, they unleashed a reign of terror in Budapest, murdering Jews in the streets, forcing death marches, and throwing victims into the Danube River. Horthy was taken to Germany, where he was kept under house arrest until the end of the war. After Germany's defeat, Horthy was not tried at Nuremberg. He was questioned, but Western powers considered him a minor figure compared to Nazi leaders. His partial resistance to Nazi demands, especially the halting of deportations, likely helped his case. He eventually settled in exile in Portugal, where he wrote his memoirs and lived until his death in 1957 at the age of 88. Today, Miklos Horthy remains a deeply polarizing figure in Hungarian and European history. Supporters view him as a patriot, someone who fought to restore Hungary's dignity, resisted totalitarianism when he could, and acted to save lives during the Holocaust. Critics see him as a collaborator, someone who empowered the far right, enabled anti-Semitism, and only acted against the Nazis when it was too late. What's undeniable is that Horthy was caught between two ruthless empires, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. His story is one of compromise, calculation, and the moral grey zones of wartime leadership. He wasn't a dictator like Hitler or Stalin, but he wasn't a democratic hero either. He was a man trying to navigate an impossible situation, one with terrible consequences for millions. Karma. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more history.